What's up, chat? How's it going? Welcome back to the stream. It's Tuesday. We're getting tactical. So I thought that, well, it's an interesting week, I guess, for Tactical Tuesday because we're really in the middle of a couple different kind of seasons right now. We have the data slate last week, which means most of the competitive events are not using it. The larger competitive events certainly are not using it from this past weekend, which means that the results from this past weekend are kind of like, I don't know. They're kind of whatever. I'm going to be honest. They were interesting. We can take a quick look at them if we want to. But I honestly, I don't know how useful it's going to be. Especially because, and mostly the reason I say that is because we're in between, you know, we're in this spoiler season for 10th edition. So really focusing on outdated 9th edition metagames is a little bit funky. So I think what we may do, and moving on to the future, seems like my mic's a little hot here, chat. I'm going to try to fix that. I'm just on my headset microphone today. I hope it sounds okay. Let me know if it is. I can switch back to my other one if it doesn't sound too good. But I think what we may do going on into the future is start just doing a 10th edition roundup every week and just talking about 10th edition stuff that has come out and, you know, given my thoughts. So we may begin with that. And then from there, I think what we're going to do is actually take a bit of a deep dive into lists from this past weekend and look at less competitive events, because these smaller sort of RTT level events are much more likely to have used the or not used, or are much more likely to have used the new data slate, excuse me. So these smaller events may be what we look at. But that's what I'm thinking, chats. The Salt City GT used the new data slate. Salt City. What is that? Salt City. I don't know. I'm not familiar. Yeah, I don't know if that is if that exists, chat. I can't tell you anything about that. But let's start with, before we get into that, let's start with Warhammer community stuff. Because we did get a brand new article about 10th edition, and I may just resize my screen here so we can see it. I don't want a repeat of the other week where I made a whole slideshow that was cut off on my screen cap, and nobody told me. I felt so bad. I'm just going to turn off my crop entirely. All right, we'll do that. Now you can see all of my tabs, but that's okay. I only have 2. All right, chat. Let's talk about some 10th edition. So they gave us a little bit of a spoiler of the phases of the game. And I think for the most part, this is... It says it's about phases, but mostly I think this is about psychic powers. Because I think the big headliner is that there's no psychic phase anymore. You start with command and move through all the existent phases, but without psychic powers. So it is what it is. The RTT you went to over the weekend did not use the new data slate? Really? An RTT didn't? The one I went to certainly did. So there you go. That's wild that they wouldn't lock in rules day of. That's usually how RTTs work in my experience. Are they big Thousand Suns Terminators? Just regular Scarab Occults, I think. I think they're just in the foreground, chat. I don't think they're any larger. All right. So the big thing about the big headliner is that the psychic phase is gone. There's no more psychic tests or anything. And the thing that it sounded like, based on their previous discussion, was that psychic powers were moving to abilities, to like activated abilities that worked in different phases, but that it may be that they retained the same mechanic, like the cast and deny mechanic. And that wasn't explicitly stated, but it was implied by some of the terminology that the team used. And that, it turns out, is absolutely not the case. I think that I was a little worried that this would be how psychic powers would be implemented in 10th edition, which is that they become an ability. It's not a type of ability. It's not an activated ability. It just is something that is always active on their profile. And I mean, honestly, like, it's kind of boring. and I don't think it's necessary that psychic powers like have to be their own unique thing. But I do think it adds a lot to the game. I understand the downside of them is that armies that don't have access to psychic powers have no way to interact with the mechanic. But I think that that's a design issue, not a mechanical issue, right? Like, I think changing the entirety of the mechanic just to mollify the issue for the factions that don't have psychic powers could easily be countermanded or counteracted by giving them psychic powers, or at least giving them psychic interaction. Which they've tried to do with Necrons, like Silent King has a lot of psychic interaction. Even Saraz has psychic interaction. The Saracen Dynasty has a 4+ deny. Gloom Prisms have denies involved. And I think you add mechanics like that if you want psychic powers to have an effect for armies that don't necessarily have psychers in them. Or you give psychic-like effects like Catan, and maybe you just make them operate like psychic powers. The fact that psychic powers are now just abilities, I don't love, but it is what it is. I don't think it's kind of neither here nor there. I think that's largely personal preference. And as somebody who very much enjoys psychic armies in 9th edition, I think that I'm certainly biased in favor of the current psychic system, which is really interesting and cool. And this new system is just psychic abilities are just rules on datasheets now. Well, so that is what it is. Yeah, so I think another probably problem that could arise from these abilities being, sort of tied to these characters is that if the psychic powers aren't good enough, right, the character's just not going to see play. And its effects are very limited, which is probably, I mean, that's kind of the reason that it works like this. And I think that's the case for every character. I don't know if that's if that's a real actual criticism of the system. Just being like, well, because the character's not very good, you're not going to take the character. That's true for any character. So I don't know if that's not that great. So this guy gives sustained hits 1, which is, I believe, exploding 6s, if I remember correctly, to a unit. But the downside is you can't add him to any of the other characters. It's unlike lieutenants, which give precise, I think, right? Auto wounding on 6s. Outside of lieutenants, you can't stack this with anything. And Psychers don't give you any ability to influence units that are already stacked with the character. So I don't know how often you'll see this guy, to be honest. He does bring a good gun, though. Smite is a pretty good gun. So Smite now just becomes a ranged attack. You can either do a less powerful version that doesn't have a chance to kill you, or a more powerful version that has the hazardous keyword. And it sounds like the hazardous keyword that they mentioned at the bottom here is basically the plasma gun effect from the current version. If you die on a roll of 1, and remember, you probably won't get rerolls, right? So it's going to be super duper lethal. Or inflicts mortal wounds for characters and big models on an unlucky roll. I imagine that it's 1... It might be D3 at the end of the shooting step, or maybe just 1 for each 1 rolled. I don't know. However it works. But you can take the risk in order to power up your Smite and shoot a Strength 6 AP2 D3 damage shot. The problem that here is that it's just like so random. It's a Necron gun. It's a random shot weapon for random damage. And especially because it has devastating wounds, right? So your wound rolls of 6 are really strong, and your hit rolls of 1 are really shitty. So it's like super duper random. It's all over the place, which I guess is like supposed to be kind of representing the old manifestation or warp, psychic test rules, right? Where you're like, well, you could perils and take a bunch of damage, but supercharge your smite. And now it's a little bit more focused, which is good, but I don't know. It's a lot of rolling. I don't know if I love it. How do I expect this to change Tyranids? I don't think we can prognosticate on how, like, how abilities are going to change factions, because we don't know anything about the factions or abilities. It could be that any of these factions sees like a top-down redesign entirely of their like mechanical identity. So I don't think it's worth like really like worrying too much about. So I know there's some questions in here about anti-psychic abilities. All of these psychic abilities and weapons are keyworded psychic. So I imagine that a lot of those effects are going to have this kind of verbiage, right? You get a feel no pain against psychic attacks. You may be that like units within 18 lose any psychic abilities that they would provide their attached unit, for example. I imagine that that's how that turns in. I like that it's psychic keyworded, because then it creates interaction. But the interaction doesn't really make that much sense if psychic isn't more powerful than a normal ability, so I don't know. It is what it is. The randomness is mitigated by Oath of the Moment. I guess that's you're not wrong for librarians specifically. They are going to have access to big rerolls for sure. Yeah, that was the other. So the other thing, talking about combi weapons, chat. I see y'all in there discussing combi weapons. Combi weapons, it looks like, have been removed, or every combi weapon being an individual profile has been removed. They've been streamlined to just being a special bolter, basically. So you could have a Stormbolter that's 2-shot rapid fire 2, right? So shoots 2 times, shoots 4 times at half range, or 1-shot rapid fire 1, so 1 shot at full range, 2 shots at long range, that gets anti-infantry 4 and devastating wounds. So but gets -1 to hit. So I don't know, the keywords are really good on that, but the 4+ to hit really kind of sucks. 4+ to hit and half of as many attacks. Is really awkward. So the devastating wounds is a wound roll of 6, converts it to mortals, and then anti-infantry 4. I guess that means it would convert to mortals on a 4+ now, right? Because devastating wounds triggers on a critical hit, a critical wound, and anti-infantry gives you critical wounds on a 4. So it's actually really good against. Yeah, all right. I've turned myself around here. It auto wounds and bypasses saves on infantry on a 4+. If that's how that works, which I think it is, which is actually sick. So you, on average, do 25% of a mortal wound. Assuming no rerolls, you do 25% of a mortal wound every time you shoot that to an infantry unit, which is pretty solid. Versus a Stormbolter, where you're shooting through like super tough saves with AP 0. .5 mortal wounds per shot. Well, 0.5 mortal wounds per wound roll, right? But you have to roll a 4+ to hit, so it's a quarter of a mortal wound per shot, right? So you get half a mortal wound out of 2 of them. Oh, with 3 rolls? Yeah, maybe, probably. Which is pretty solid. Does it mean a combi melta just sucks? No, it means combi meltas don't exist anymore. There's no such thing as a combi melta, a combi plasma, a combi flamer, a combi volkite, a combi anything. Every single combi weapon, any one of those profiles, all uses this stat line. So it doesn't matter what the gun next to the bolter is, they all have the same stat block. The combi weapon changes the model packaging issue. Yeah, I also think that that's definitely the case. Like combi weapon sourcing was a real problem. Because anytime a particular combi weapon variety was in the metagame, it became impossible to acquire. And then suddenly you had to 3D print or you had to convert it. And Games Workshop's moving away from trying to incentivize that kind of, third-partification, I guess. And this is a really good way to do that. Yeah, and you get this in addition to the psychic powers, yeah. For sure. Well, theoretically. I assume that you get it in addition to psychic powers, but that we do not know, to be fair. That could be not the case. Oh, it also says it for sure. Oh, alongside any other regular guns. Yeah, you're right, chap. Yeah. So there's probably no additional baggage for the psychic keyword. It just works for defensive abilities. So that's cool. I like that they discuss every Space Marine librarian. They use the word chicanery. It's a good word. Love it. Bringing their own flavor. So I imagine that we see like maybe a normal Primaris librarian will have like Psychic Fortress as their special rule. Another Space Marine librarian might have Might of Heroes as their special rule. The Phobos librarian probably has like Temporal Corridor as their special rule or something. So they'll each have their own unique profiles, which I actually do really appreciate. One of the things that always really bugs me about the profiles in 40k is that it was so like RPG-ified, right? Where like you had your character, and then your character would have different war gear, like different, like an RPG loadout, right? Where it's like, what kind of armor do you want to buy? It has this like defensive profile. What kind of weapons do you want to buy? But when you convert that to a tabletop game, it just means that you always take the one that's like the most statistically efficient, and every other variety of that character just disappears. So there was no reason to have like 7 different types of librarians, because you always just took the one that was like fit, that it was the most efficient points cost for your army. But the fact that it looks like all of them will all these different Terminator loadouts or librarian loadouts, excuse me, will have different special abilities that they contribute actually gives each of them a unique place in the army. I also imagine that because they all have the leader ability, they'll probably have different units that they can join, right? Like, I imagine none of the other ones will be able to join Phobos units, but the Phobos Librarian will, which means that they can create more interesting combos between taking Phobos Librarians inside Phobos units versus other units that can have abilities that are super busted for Phobos units or vice versa. So I think that system, I hope that they do interesting things with that system, because I'd be really excited about it. What will the Dreadnought Librarian do? Probably Wings of Sanguinius itself. Probably, I imagine. How do I think Psychic Powers like Tenebrous Curse will work? I would be shocked if Tenebrous Curse remained as a Psychic Power. I have a sneaking suspicion that a lot of the psychic power, like especially the offensive debuff powers we remember, are going to be going the way of the dodo. Yeah, that would be surprising to me. Now, another thing that this kind of speaks to me is that we got that leak a while ago that talked about different Tyranid profiles, and I made a whole video about it, and that might be totally incorrect, because it did discuss the big psychic guy getting psychic test rerolls. And if psychic tests are gone, then it's certainly not going to do that anymore. So that kind of probably throws that leak under the bus. Unless it maybe like rerolls the number of attacks for smites or something. I don't know. It could be anything. Yeah, so the Weird Boy's the other one. Weird Boy's really interesting. I like it. The Weird Boy explodes. I actually didn't realize this before. Does the Librarian explode? No. The Librarian just teleports. The Weird Boy blows up when he dies. That's fucking great. This is why Universal Special Rolls are so cool, chat, because you can just slot them onto characters for fun flavor moments. That's so good. My guy blows up. Oh, interestingly, I guess his melee weapon psychic. Is the force weapon also psychic? Yeah. Also, Librarian stick at weapon skill 3. Sucks to suck. It's only AP 1 on the force weapon. I guess this is like specifically an axe. Maybe the swords will have a higher AP. So he buffs up his gun. It has precision, right, which is auto wounding on 6s. That is correct, right? I believe so. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong there. It's only 1 shot, though, and he doesn't get additional shots for having guys in his unit. So this is like real old school Weird Boy energy, where he gets the huge bonuses when he's near larger and larger amounts of orcs. So for every 5 models in the unit, he gets +1 strength and damage. So if he's in a 30 model Orc Boy Squad, then it's +6 strength and damage. So strength 12, 7 damage. But it gains hazardous, so it can do damage on if he rolls a 1 to hit. But it's only 1 shot on a 4+. Which is like, I wish it was, I don't know. I wish it was like, it's a huge gun, potentially. But I think you're really bringing him. I think that the Ed Banger's cute. But I think that you are... Oh, Precision is a Horus Heresy thing? Is that not what the Lieutenant does? Or is that just the name of his ability? Where did the character preview go? In my head, that was what Lieutenants did. But maybe that's wrong? Maybe they gave Sustained. No, but the Librarian gives Sustained. Come on. Where's the Lieutenant? Preview. It's in the article they talked about characters. Jesus Christ, this is taking a long time. Get your stuff together, Warhammer community. Oh, it gives lethal hits. Okay. I'm sorry, chat. Have they talked about what lethal hits does? Oops. It's different than devastating wounds. And it's different than sustain is exploding 6s. It must be auto wounding on 6s, right? They didn't talk about it, right? Yeah. Oh no, there you go. Yeah, it is. Okay, so lethal hits is the auto wounding on 6s. Okay. So precision must be something else. I guess it would make sense, given that this is an ability meant to represent that the Weird Boy is like literally blowing somebody's head up. It would make sense that the Weird Boy would be able to pick who's doing it too. So he'd be like a little assassin guy. If he goes in with a big unit, he just jumps in and vaporizes your character out of your unit, and you're like, "It's great." We'll have to see though. I guess so. It's confusing because his ability is tactical precision, but it does not grant precision. That was what was throwing me off, chat. What the fuck? That's a good example of how not to use universal special rules. That's very confusing. Why call it tactical lethality and then you get lethal hits? That's so stupid. Jesus Christ. Yeah, there was a NIDS thing to get precision against character units, right? Which the assumption is any unit that includes a character. So, I guess potentially, yeah, you could use it to just snipe out people's characters. I guess that's pretty good, too, because you could snipe out unit champions and stuff. Yeah, I know that's what the aura was called in the previous version, but that's a bad name for it if they're changing the mechanic. You gotta give it a new thing. Anyway, this guy, he can jump every turn at the end of the movement phase, pick you up and deep strike you. I kind of, it's weird that this isn't like, I don't know. There's no like keyword deep strike on this. So if you have something that affects specifically enemies that are deep striking, it doesn't do anything. It's just kind of strange. But that might just be how reserves work. It's a little bit weird because it's on a 2+. On a 1, the unit takes D6 mortal wounds, so you probably just kill D6 idiots if you roll a 1, but on a 2+, you get to teleport. I have a sneaking suspicion that this guy's probably going to be pretty good with dudes with guns, because he himself has a gun, right? And that lets you, like, turn 1 deep strike Ludas or something on people, assuming that he can join them. We'll see. Interesting that his faction ability is Wah, so they'll probably have a similar Wah mechanic, but I don't know if, like, Here We Go is still going to be a part of their army. The reroll charges that they had. So it is every turn, which sounds really scary, right? But it's just worse than the current to jump, right? It's more consistent than the current to jump, but the weird boy himself teleports. It's not that he teleports someone else on a 2+ every turn. It's that he teleports himself in his unit. So unlike the current version of the jump and the 8th ed version of the jump, where a weird boy was in the back teleporting another unit every turn and just like sort of forcing their way into you, the weird boy just brings himself along. And if you kill that unit on the swing back, he's also dead. So it's actually, it being every turn is like, whoa, that's crazy. But it also seems like way worse. At least it's more limited in usefulness. That said, I think it's good on gun guys because you can also probably just pick a map out of combat too. So if your dudes with guns get engaged, you could just jump out. Also, this dude's strength 8. Holy shit. The regular Libby's only strength 6, yeah. Strength 8, AP1. That's a solid profile right there. Yeah, I think overall it's a nerf, or at least it changes how it works, right? Yeah, Veil of Darkness. Yeah, it's very Veil of Darkness-y for sure. Pretty cool. I mean, again, that's like hard to speculate exactly how important that's going to be because you don't know what the rest of the Orc faction looks like. If the Orc faction's all about like making 6-inch charges on people or whatever, then probably not a very great ability. But if you can bring solid ranged attackers, maybe like Burna Boys. Like, what if you get attached to Burna Boys and you can just you can drop like 20 Burna Boys on somebody or 10 Burna Boys on somebody 9 inches away and torrent them to death? Like, that'd be cool. The other thing that they talked about pretty significantly is the morale phase. Oh yeah, so I guess morale was removed from the phase sequence. Now it just happens in the command phase. And it looks like it happens to every unit that's below half strength. Or single models that are less than half of their starting wounds. So you can potentially be battle shocked theoretically even if you're a vehicle, which is kind of huge. So in addition to, we talked about vehicles in the last article kind of being really tanky and not having many ways to, or at least like things like rhinos, right, didn't have any degradation, but larger vehicles might have at 30% of their wounds. But it might be that they may start having to take leadership checks, which is actually kind of insane. So if you're a Imperial Knight, you might run away, I guess. But interestingly, it just gives you penalties if you fail your leadership check. So you roll for every unit that's below half strength against your leadership characteristic. So it doesn't happen like during your opponent's turn, and it happens, as far as I can see, every single turn, regardless of when you were brought below half strength. So if you get knocked to half on turn 1 and then run away and hide for the rest of the game, you have to keep rolling every turn, which is pretty cool. Yeah, because the Battle Shock's status effects last until your next command phase. You get reduced to objective control 0. You take whatever a desperate escape test is, and that might just be like a roll a d6 on a 1 you die kind of thing. That might be, I kind of imagine that's what that just gets keyworded in disembarking from destroyed transports and falling back out of wraps with Desperate Breakout. I imagine that's what that ends up being. And then I think that honestly the biggest one might be that you can't use stratagems to affect that unit, which is kind of insane. I don't love these effects. They're like very narrow in their use case, and they removing tools from people is just kind of a big feels bad. So I'm not super psyched about that, but it is what it is. Do we know if you can control objective if you have OC0 but there are no contesting models? We don't know that. I speculated that you can, and that the objective control is just a tiebreaker, but I don't know that for sure. It might be that OC0 just straight up can't control objectives, which would be huge. So, I have no idea. Battleshocked vehicles is sort of like a return to crew stunned and shaken? Yeah, maybe. Goodbye MSU? I mean, maybe. But also, like, MSU is usually about trading units, right? If your MSU unit is below 50% casual or starting strength, then it's probably dead. Like, you're just happy that your unit's not dead at that point. I actually think that this is most horde units are going to get dropped below 50% very easily because they're usually low. Their defensive characteristics are bad, and then as soon as you fail battle shock, it's like super bad for you. If you have like a 30 orc boy squad who's like probably OC2 or 3 and you have 30 models and you fail your battle shock test and they like your remaining 14 get dropped to OC0 and you just lose objectives to everything, it's going to be like disgustingly bad. But if it's MSU and you fail a battle shock on 2 guys and then you just reinforce them with a different unit, it doesn't make that much of a difference. But who knows? I mean, we'll have to see what the data sheets say, honestly. To be fair, models probably never should have died to morale. Orc boys are like easy enough to kill that you don't really need to like remove them from morale, in my opinion. That morale was always an extra tax on horde units that they never really deserved, because horde units have never been good in 40k. At least in modern 40k. Like since the AP values moved over to being a saving throw reduction, anything with any like value of AP just rinses a huge unit down. And because it's so easy to get line of sight to large units because they're physically hard to like hide, you just see like a Gladiator Reaper sees the tail end of one dude's gun and kills 20 models. So like I'm not sure. I don't think that dynamic will have changed. And then if that unit fails its battle shock test, like the big benefit of those horde units is that they are really good at holding objectives for a long time. And if you get battle shocked and all of your guys turn to OC0 and you get contested by anything, it's going to be really bad for you. So, plus you have to then, because it's a horde unit, you have to then roll every turn, theoretically, right? Ugh. And their leadership's probably not that bad. Anyway. I think that's all we have to talk about, right? I think the only other thing that they spoiled was just a look at the librarian model, which we didn't. I mean, it looks fine, I guess. I don't know if I love the runic armor is kind of like, it's kind of cool, but I don't know if it really fits with Space Marines too well. It looks a little silly. I think I would like this guy more if he didn't have the runic armor, which is weird because that's usually an aesthetic I kind of like, but I don't know if like Space Marines are all tactical and stuff, and adding on like all of these weird like esoteric carvings, like glowy runes and magical stuff is a little bit strange. I always liked that librarians were kind of very like technologified magic. They had the psychic hood and the regulators and the all these like wires and stuff, and then running back and making it into like some sort of mysticism is a little bit, I don't know, feels like a step backwards, but fortunately there's plenty of other librarian models that don't have those that you can play, so it's not that big of a deal. The runes make it look like a word bearers. That's absolutely correct. It does look like a chaos model. This is really a release for chaos players, to be fair, more than for Imperium players, I think, because this guy turns into a chaos sorcerer immediately. It's perfect. You just replace the thing, like you replace this with a chaos star, right? And you replace his shoulder pad, and you're done. He almost literally, he has a 7-pointed star on his little collar thing here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If he got that, 7 points. So that's like, he's almost just straight up got a chaos symbol on him anyway. And the Libraria symbol that's like the horned skull is always very chaosy. He has one small step from falling to chaos immediately. Yeah, he does look like a Space Wolf too. Yeah, I think he's that's the other one. Is that he does look he's even got a beard, a nice little Space Wolfy beard. So that's definitely fair. He's definitely Space Wolfy. Anyway. Good stuff. All right, let's talk about some lists, chat. I messed up my search thing here. Oh, I was looking through lists. So I wanted to just take a quick peek at some smaller events from this past weekend. Again, because I think that there's probably a greater chance we see results from the actual most recent season. Assume the runes don't match other Space Wolf runes. I guess that's a little funky, right? Because not all of the Space Marine chapters like use the same rune system, I imagine. Now this is a list search. What did I do in the parameters here? I only got like 6 results. Beskos Fairings, what are you doing to me? All right, let's try this. I'm gonna try this on my emulator. I thought that would work. That's weird. He's ready to run Lion and Gilliman together. I hope that list is good, chat. I feel like it's not gonna be, but I hope it's good. I'm gonna try this one more time. Actually, we'll just go through events. That's what we'll do. This is easier. Maybe that's what I was doing earlier. We'll go smaller events first. So we'll go down to the bottom here. Down to the 3-rounders. Oh yeah, what were we talking about? The salt something? Yeah, I don't know what event that is, chat, because it is, to my knowledge, not on Beskos Fairings. Unless it's like way down here. Oh, what did I do? I messed up my dates. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, I sent it through June. What the fuck? That's not what I wanted. Yeah, I don't know what event that is. I cannot see it. Last minute? This event uses the data site? Is this the right one? Oh yeah, it's not called Salt at all. We can look at the mission pack. Love it. Love it when you can easily find these events mission packs, chat. Oh, they put all the missions in too? This is a player placket and a half. Hell yeah. Hell yeah, last minute GT. I love that. I guess it didn't say anything about rules cutoff, so I'll take your word for it, chat. Let's see who won this one. Genestealer Cults. Yeah, so we saw a lot of Necrons. Oh, Corey, I see why you're in there. why you're evangelizing for this event so much. So congratulations on your second place. We saw a lot of Necrons this weekend, though. And I think that's really interesting. I think Necrons kind of put up some decent results, and I'm proud of them for that. There's a little bit of 1,000 Suns as well. So what are we at for Genestealer Cults today, everybody? Pauper Princes. So we're tanking really, really hard. So we have the Primus with the Reliquary. And we take a Biophagus, who I believe grants the damage ignore roll. So the Reliquary of Saint Tendark is the reason that you play Pauper Princes. And it gives you a 5-up invulnerable save on core infantry. Or core units, I believe. Yeah, just core units. Within 6. And then sometimes you take Alien Majesty. Oh yeah, we did. So that increases it to a 9-inch aura of 5+ invulnerable. And it's unit, not model. So if you have it on these enormous Acolyte bricks, it actually affects huge swaths of the table. Basically, your entire army has a 5-up damage or a 5-up invulnerable save, which is absolutely wild. And then the Biophagus can experiment on people and give them a 5-up damage ignore on top of that. So you can make these big, huge bricks of dudes like ridiculously difficult to kill. You also get +1 to hit in melee, so it gives you like a little bit of a... It's +1 to hit on first round combat, so it's basically just Born Heroes. It's a little bit better because you don't have to have charged. You could be charged as well. So it gives you a little bit of industrial affinity because you ignore the hit penalty on your heavy melee weapons. Or you don't ignore it, you just buff through it. And then you have all that stuff behind all of this defensive technology, and you have an Acolyte Icon Ward sitting behind them, regenerating them. So, yeah, these armies are ridiculously tough to kill, and they're just hundreds and hundreds of models for the most part. Yeah, so Adelan Jackals. We don't have, obviously, the damage ignore from the War Convoy, but you do have like the -1 to be hit into a 5+ invulnerable save, which is tough to get through. Wonder if Thick City Drukhari will cause some problems again? I honestly could not be happier if the meta has swung all the way back around to Drukhari being the best army in the game. Yeah, Drukhari did get what's the word? Core back on their Talos and stuff. Corey, what'd you play over here? Silver Tide? Whoa! So what is old is new again? Holy crap! So we're Relentlessly Expansionist Unyielding, which is that one I don't know. So we get the 6-inch pregame move. Everything, it looks like for the most part, most of the stuff is objective secured anyway, so you don't need to play the, you don't need to try to like play Nylock or whatever to try to get the universal upsec, because you just already have normal upsec. So Unyielding is a 6+ invuln. So you get like half of a Chronomancer buff. And then one unit does actually get a Chronomancer buff. Saraz, he can give you +1 ballistic skill on your Neko Warriors, and that's pretty good. That used to be the funny meme every time he would buff. When you could buff Silent King with Saraz, he would always buff him for +1 ballistic skill. Which is actually, in some cases, useful, because you can stack to below a 2+ ballistic skill. You can go to a 1+ ballistic skill. You still always miss on 1s, but what it did mean is it basically gave you +1 to hit. So you could ignore the first hit penalty, essentially. So he would shoot into dense cover and be hitting on 2s anyway, which is funny. But buffing 20 Necron Warriors with +1 ballistic skill is way better. And then an Overlord with Inspiring Leader to give them +1 leadership. Oh my god. That is like a legitimate fear for Silver Tide. If you lose like 18 Necron Warriors, you have to auto pass the last guy, but you only get one of those per game. I guess 18's not a good example, but if you lose like 7, right, after reanimations, you'd be like, ooh, we could die to morale here. But giving +1 leadership is actually pretty reasonable. I like that technology. That's cool. The old school Hexmark Destroyer with Gauntlet of the Conflagrator, 2 Canoptic Reanimators to give them +1 on reanimation protocols. Love it. A Ghost Arc to regenerate some guys, and the Silent King himself. Plus Sarah's over here is obviously he's a super Technomancer, so he can get a bunch of Necron Warriors back every turn. That's sick. we're back, baby, to the days of the Silver Tide. That's cool. Yeah, that's exciting. What else is in our top 3 here? Black Templars from John Teets. What an interesting top 3. So, despite that they just got nerfed, Genestealer Cult still going 5-0 in this event. And then Necrons and Black Templars at X and 1. Black Templars, I think, like I said in my faction ranking, I don't know if Black Templars, outside of the vehicle builds, really cared that much about the change to... what's the word? Codex Warfare. So I think they're still... And they were already overperforming in the previous season, so I think they're still going to do well. So this is double Gladiator Reapers with the top mounted multi-melta. Oh, so cheeky. So cheeky. 2 Impulsors. So this is a little bit of a mixed bag. 1 Desolation Squad, a Terminator brick, huge Terminator brick, holy crap. 5 Bladeguard Veterans, an Apothecary with Selfless Healer. Icon of Hindman on the Blade Guard, which is ignore AP 1 and 2. It's interesting that we don't have the... What is it? Crux Obsidian to give -1 damage on any of these guys. It's also no... Champion of the Feast? Oh, no, it's on this guy. And he's got Sword of Judgment. So he's got the... So this is the supercharged Bladeguard Veteran Sergeant. So he has the Icon of Hindman, and then the Champion of Feast gives him +1 wound. So he's got 4 wounds, ignore AP 1 and 2 with a 2+4+. And he's really strong in melee, and then every turn you kill him. You allocate all your damage to him, you kill him, and then the Apothecary just brings it back. He's got the Crusader Salm, so +3 inches to auras, so his Selfless Healer aura is bigger. So he can make both of these bricks much harder to kill. And then just a bunch of OBSEC idiots. I love it. Classic Black Templars. What a time. That's good stuff. The nerf to GSC wasn't huge. Yeah, you're not wrong, chat. I think it was still fine. They're still certainly going to be like eminently playable. I think that they just went from having an auto 15 on a secondary to having an auto like let me just silence my phone here real quick, chat. To having like an auto 12. And because they're so good, just the archetype of army that GSC is already good at scoring secondary and primary. So I don't... They're still going to be a high-scoring army, basically, regardless. All right. So let's move down to some smaller events here, chat. Oop. Warmaster GT Series. This is a 4-round event. Weird. That's wild. What is this event? Oh, it's a heat for a larger GT. That's cool. All right. Now, I do wish that we got to take a look at the actual high placing list, but we'll just do this manually for a little while and see what we get. So here's Kyle Murray over here, 3-0 with Chaos Knights. Us Herpatrax mostly. We have 1 Dreadblade with Worthy Offering, so plus 1 hit against monsters' vehicles. And then a bunch of Herpatrax War Dogs. Oh, this is 1,000 points. That's just less exciting. This is the downside of looking at the smaller events. Sometimes you get random weird formats. All right. We'll find some big ones. 33 people in Pasadena. Hot damn, Gameology. Calm down. Look at all this. Oh, these are some household names. Joel Wilson from CPZ. Or XPZ, excuse me. Another Necron 3-0. Damn, dude. I did see... I also played an event this weekend, and there was a really interesting Necron list there that was mass Tomb Blades. And people were talking like it was a pretty Pretty reasonable list. It sounds mathematically pretty good, but I think it probably loses to the top edge stuff pretty consistently. So this is Nylock, so army-wide OBSAC, with a big Lich Guard brick. Team Blades, 7 Locust Destroyers, 2 Monoliths, a Tesseract Vault, and the Silent King. Oh my god, that's the spice, chat. Oh, okay. So we just have a brick of Monoliths and the Silent King. The Tesseract Vault is really sick right now because it can just do mass mortal wounds. The downside of the Tesseract Vault is it's very difficult to use, like, sort of, logistically on the table. In some situations, it's difficult to operate in the first turn. I think that they're just big enough to fit in your deployment zone, even on Dawn of War deployments. But moving it around, especially on, like, the deeper deployment zones, can be kind of tough. But that said, it does a ton of damage. And then the Silent King's there to point +1 to hit and rerolls onto 2 Monoliths, which do kind of insane damage for 270 points. And it just sort of like wub-wubs around the table until the faster units can complete all your secondary objectives, and then you win. Plus all that stuff is OBSEC. The Silent King is not, and I don't believe the Tesseract Vault is. Is the Tesseract Vault a Dynasty keyword? It is a Catan, so usually they're not. Oh, it is Dynasty keyworded. Okay, just kidding. So it's also objective secured. All right, cool. Well, there you go. That's a Technomancer with the Canoptic Cloak, so he can also repair all that stuff too. He's just fighting versus architecture? Yeah, that is... that is spicy, chat. Dark Angels! Continuing to show up here. Oh, with the lion! Oh, chat! This event was so spicy. Kevin Rockhold. Deathwing Terminator bricks. Now I wonder if this did use the newest update, because it was... No, there's no information on the event page, because we are running Deathwing Terminators, and I don't know how often you'll see Deathwing Terminators now that they've been changed. But maybe it's fine. But a bunch of Deathwing Terminators, 10 Desolation Marines, and I do think that that is one key benefit of Dark Angels, is that they do have a very good interaction with Desolation Squads. Their Desolation Squads are extremely good. I don't know if they're quite as good as Iron Hands, but they're a close second, because they just stand still and give themselves +1 to hit. So they basically just universally get around the indirect fire penalty with all of their guns, which is pretty good. And especially if you're playing Ravenwing stuff on Moss, you're probably going to be staying in Devastator Doctrine for the entire game anyway. So they don't even get too much of a penalty. In this situation, this is very Deathwing focused, so you might move to Assault Doctrine, but I don't know. And then there's the frickin' Lion, chat. Did we even bring his Warlord trait? It doesn't look like we did. Who needs it? Whatever. Who needs it, chat? Yeah. Ooh, excuse me. Didn't pay the CP for it. Well, there you go. Space Wolves are a close second or third with Keen Senses. Does Keen Senses ignore the ballistic skill modifier? I assume so. That's a little bit tougher because you oftentimes want to be using that on your like Devastator squads or your Longfang squads that are popping out of cover. But it still seems good. Want to use that one? Shooting phase? Yeah, ballistic. It does ignore ballistic skill modifiers. That's solid. That's good technology right there. And then we also see Grey Knights at 3-0. Whoa! This is double Brotherhood Librarians. Holy crap. Wait, what? What is this squad? Is this unit hype? Or is this army hype? So it's a Agents of the Imperium Auxiliary to get 5 Voidsmen with a rotor cannon. You get a 5 Voidsmen in the Arcs of Omen detachment itself. So we have 2 just idiot 5-man squads to set on objectives. 1 GMNDK, Caldor Drago. It's 25 Interceptors and 2 Strike Squads, 3 total Dread Knights, 1 Grandmaster Dread Knight, and 2 regular Dread Knights, and then 2 Brotherhood Librarians. Neither of them is Psychic Epitomide. They're both just Mortal Wound Librarians, and one of them has Presaged Paralysis, which is no Overwatch, I believe, once per game. Is that the right one? That's extremely technical. What are we doing with that? What are we worried about overwatching us? Yeah, no Overwatch, no set to defend at the start of your charge phase. I guess, like, I don't know. It's good. It was good against Chaos Demons when their Overwatch is really broken, but it's not so much anymore. So I guess like broadside battle suits, if we're worried about like the Tau broadside lists coming back because broadside's got core back. That's interesting, but it's nice to see a little bit of a difference in the Grey Knight builds. It's cool to see Grey Knights at 3-0, but it's also nice to see Grey Knights not just as the normal like giant, just 1,000 Dread Knights everywhere. April RTT from Denver 40K Fight Club. See if they say anything about the data slate. This is a very in-depth event description. Wow. No paint requirements, but you lose your 10 battle points. We're going hard on the paint requirements. I always appreciate RTTs that don't require painting. It makes it much more accessible to new players and to people who are like practicing. But I understand if you don't want to do it. It ensures that your RTTs are like less degenerate, I think, if you enforce the 10 points for painting, because people won't just like YOLO into whatever the best thing is that they like are getting commissioned up and bring like a half painted army with it. Which is, I guess, good and bad. Who knows? Broadsides are still okay. They're not coming back on Moss. Well, you're going to see 3, I think, in every Tau army. I don't think that... I don't think that there's like any universe where you don't see 3, honestly. With Long Strike, with like through Boldness Victory and telescopic targeting, and then you point rerolls at them and they just drop like a bunch of auto wounds from their missiles at people. And then can also just like slap and as soon as somebody gets into line of sight. I think the rest of the army is Riptides and stuff. I don't think the rest of it changes, but I do think that broadsides are really good. So Ulthway Eldar. Whoa! So I talked at one point about, I think, why I really liked RTTs. And we're already kind of seeing the reasons why, right? We see like double Monolith, like Tesseract, Vault Necrons at 3-0. This is an Eldar monster mash. Ulthway with an Avatar. Eldrad Farseer, no Behareth. Get that guy out of here. He doesn't have 9 wounds. 3 Wraith Lords and 2 Wraith Seers. What? This list is sick. Are you kidding me? There are 6 D cannons, but you have to find a way to win somehow, and then 2 units of Shroudrunners. But those are mostly going to create space just for these mass Wraith Lords to wander around the middle of the table. This list is so cool. Good stuff. I love it. How's scoring is weak? Yeah, it's not good for sure. Their secondary play is really bad, but I mean, welcome to the club, right? That's like half the game. I think that, I don't know. There are certainly effective Tau lists that I think rely heavier on their infantry and less on their damage dealing. I think the Tau armies that only deal damage and hope that sees them through are a little bit spiky. But those have, I mean, to be fair, in my, egg on my face, I guess, those have been ones that have been very useful or very powerful in the past, or very effective in the past. The ones that are like triple Riptide, a bunch of Hammerheads or whatever. But I think the ones that bring like a ton of Kroot and a bunch of Hounds and stuff for a lot of like mid-game board control is actually pretty effective. Necrons as well here. This is Novak Dynasty. So that's good at fighting, right? We have the stratagem for 1 CP to fight for +1 attack. So we have a 10 brick of Lich Guard. And the benefit there is that if these guys are near the Catacomb Command Barge, you can pay a CP to give them +1 attack, and then you can stack that with the Novak benefit. So they come in with 5 attacks apiece, if I remember correctly. Their profile is not that good, but they are hitting on 2s if they're being ordered. And then if you have Silent King there, which we do, they are rerolling wound rolls as well. So that unit actually slaps pretty hard. 2 units of Scorpic Destroyers as well. 1 Ophidian Destroyer unit, okay. Scarab Swarms to do secondaries. 1 Monolith. Everybody's on the Monolith train today. 3 Heavy Destroyers and the Silent King. That's a sexy list, too. The Monolith is less exciting without Objective Secured. It is kind of a meme with Objective Secured, but it's good enough at shooting, and you don't really feel too bad about exposing it, because it's not ridiculously expensive, and it's hard enough to kill that your opponent doesn't want to really shoot at it. And so at the worst case, it draws fire from all of the Lich Guard and Scorpic Destroyers. But best case, your opponent doesn't shoot it, and they have to kill all these other idiots that are running up the table at you. And then the Monolith shoots them and they die. Yeah, this one's solid. No Chronomancers at all, though. Which is interesting. 1 Technomancer has a Crypto Geometric Adjuster. I'm not familiar with. That is -1 to a unit within 12 inches and line of sight to their hit rolls. Enemy unit in the shooting phase. Okay. That's interesting. So I guess if 1 Technomancer is just like running up the table with the Lich Guard and is kind of embedded in the middle, once he gets stuck in, he can just start pointing -1 to hit at somebody. But it doesn't work in the fight phase, so it doesn't feel as useful. That's a little bit tough. Cool list though. I'm interested that we didn't see. I was gonna say Hyper Material Ablator, but that actually doesn't really do that much if you're running at your opponent. So I guess that seems fine. That gives them light cover, but only if they're 12 inches away, and I don't think that is going to be the case most of the time. I think these guys are going to be out of line of sight until they are in line of sight. I guess you can put it on. You could put it on the Monolith, and it goes to a 1+ save if they're more than 12 inches away. That's pretty good. How come we don't see that more? Brandon Roddy here with Iron Hands. Much more combined arms Iron Hands nowadays. I wonder if this army Iron Hands army is actually trying to. I don't think it's going to try to score Codex Warfare, but it's for sure can score Oaths of Moment really easily. And the more aggressive Iron Hands armies, we usually see Iron Hands moving towards having more Vanguard veterans, which they're very good at. Because Mercy's weakness works in both the charge, or both in the fight and shooting phases, and that gives you more access to shock tactics, which is good. So you can kind of lock in that as a third secondary pretty effectively. So it's a Phobos captain with Lord of Deceit, so we can redeploy. Literally just this infiltrator squad? Okay, well, that's something, I guess. A Relic Contemptor, 15 Vanguard veterans. A lot of Thunderhammers in these guys. These are expensive Vanguard veterans. 2 units of Assault Marines with melee and plasma pistols. 1 Suppressor squad. Love to see those guys on the table. bunch of Devastators in drop pods. Triple or double drop pod for the Devastators. And then 2 Rapier Carriers. Oh, yeah. The Rapier Carrier is good tech. Those things are actually sick. Especially in Iron Hands where they get +1 to hit and reroll. Or they get reroll hits. Reroll ones to hit. And if your opponent's really hiding from the Relic Contemptor, your Tech Marine can point +1 to hit at them. So they can hit on 2s rerolling ones. And they're just like, they're so cheap. They'll rinse an infantry squad pretty well, like a 10-man guardsman squad. And then you don't really want to shoot back at them because they're an odd profile to kill. And they're not worth anything. So you're like, oh, great. I have to friggin' shoot at this idiot so it doesn't hit me with a million heavy bolt shots again. What a time. Wish you could run 3 Monolith, Obelisk, Tesseract Vault, and Silent King. Yeah, you run out of Lord of War slots eventually, right? Because you only get 5 in an AOO detachment. And you still also have to have a stupid character, right? So you have to like pay for an idiot HQ because you're not knights, so you don't get rid of all of your other compulsory choices that you have to make. Oh, I guess it's up to 6 Lords of War, but you're limited in the HQ slot, right? Because you have to pay for another guy, you run out of points. Which is awkward. We got some World Eaters at top here. A Dreadclaw drop pod. All right. What are we dropping? Just Khorne Berserkers? Seems good. Invocadas with 4 units of Khorne Berserkers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. 3 units of 8-bound. An Exalted 8-bound unit. 2 Chaos Spawn. 1 Dreadclaw. So they do have the strat for 3d6 drop lowest for charges at a Deep Strike, and then you can pay Blood Tithe points to give them +1 to charge. So that's actually, it's especially if you CP reroll, which you should, because World Eaters have oogles of command points. You actually can make a pretty reasonable charge at a Deep Strike. A 9-inch rerollable is like a coin flip, right? It's a little bit worse. An 8 3d6, I think, is about a coin flip by itself. So it's like a 75% or an 80%er to get out of Deep Strike with that. Probably close to 85, I think. I don't remember the math off the top of my head, but I know that roll is actually very reasonable. That's the combo that we used to do in Tyranids out of the Tyrannocyte on the first turn. You would take aggressive or augmented ferocity for +1 to charge, and then Shard Lure, whatever you were charging, and get like 9 warriors in out of the, or 6 warriors out of the drop pod on the turn 1. Pretty solid. Yeah, it is very weird that the Supreme Commander can't take up your HQ slot in Arcs of Omen. Doesn't really make sense, but whatever. It is what it is. This is a Craft Worlds list. Kind of normal stuff, it looks like. Shroud Runners. There are Warp Spiders, which is cool. Yeah. It's not that interesting. And then Astra Militarum. I wonder if this was pre-Dataslate, looking at that list. This list is mostly unchanged. I'd be interested whether you still take the triple Khazarkin, or the double Khazarkin, with the change to the Khazarkin stratagem. Got some Custodes action. For all you Custodes folks in chat who ask me about Custodes every single week, we got one. Let's talk about it. This is a Shadow Keepers with Alea, a Dawn Eagle Shield Captain, Trajan, 2 units of Sagittarum, 3 individual Alaris Custodians, 9 Venetati, 6 Virtus Praetors, 5 Witch Seekers. All in on the fast attack, which I love. Alright, seems good. It's not particularly bricky, but the Venatari Custodians, it feels like, get even better at just like clearing chaff idiots, because the downside of the Venatari Custodians is that they randomly die because their saving throw kind of sucks. AP1's really good against them. But if you -1 attack big bricks of guys, it's actually super duper bad. So they're already low volume stuff, you know, like a character. The Shadowkeeper's -1 attack effect doesn't do as much to, but you're already as defensive as you can be against that. It's the high volume stuff like Orc Boys or something where you get like, you know, you get like 15 extra attacks for the unit where you remove those as the Shadowkeepers that make those Venatari really hurt. And that actually, I think, makes them a lot tankier. I bet that's sweet. Nice. Let's look at some Dark Angels. Yeah, this is like Ravenwing spam. This is very much what I expect to see out of Dark Angels moving forward. A champion, an apothecary, chaplain on bike, a Talon Master, and Samael. Are there no traits on the characters? Wild. Didn't even take Arbiter's Gaze. Who needs it? Get out of here. The Ravenwing champion does have Blade of Triumph. But he doesn't have... Man, we saved a ton of CP in this list. How many CP does this start with? Like 5? Because we spent 1 on Blade of Triumph. Yeah. Okay. Because a lot of times you see Imperium Sword on that guy, Selfless Healer on that guy, Wise Order on that guy, and then you buy a Relic. So you'd be at 1 CP. But I think what we're just trying to do is get as many points as possible to buff up these big bricks of Ravenwing stuff. Because you get multiple strike and, whatever it is, strike and fade with the Ravenwing champion with a ton of starting CP. Yeah, he starts with 5 command points. Says right at the top here. So that guy can dip out of combat every turn with no problem. You just pay for the apothecary bringing people back if you need it. And then it's just tons of bikes. And well, there's 1 Dark Shroud, Landspeeder Typhoons, 3 attack bike squads. And this is an actual Ravenwing detachment, so they get objective secured. I believe it is, right? Because I don't think the scouts prevent it. And then 2 units of scouts and Landspeeder Storms. So super good objective control. I guess it's not quite as alpha strikey as a lot of Ravenwing lists, because it doesn't have the big attack bike bricks that just run at people. And there's a 4 Devastator squad, 4 Las Cannon Devastator squad in the back here. That's cute. But on the flip side, it is highly technical. This list is cool. I guess that might not be an actual Ravenwing detachment, because there were Green Marines in it. Easter Showdown. It's egg time. Well, that's cool. They did an Easter egg hunt at a 40k tournament. Amazing. Red Scorpions. What are we doing with this one? We took Kasan Sabius. Are we a Space Wolf successor? We are. Oh, this is... this is old technology, chat. Oh my god. Incredible. So Kasan Sabius gives you... I'm going to remember what exactly his buff is. It is... What is it? Purity of intent and action or something? And it gives you, I think, +1 attack and +1 strength, maybe? Purity of aspect, action, and intent. Excuse me. +1 attack until the next command phase. And he's a chapter master. For 145 points. He's like okay against... He's pretty bad at melee, to be fair. He's below average in terms of his actual combat ability. But you pay to buff anybody. Or you pay to buff the core units with a bunch of extra attacks. And then you push to Assault Doctrine because you're playing Space Wolves, and then the extra attack then can explode, or potentially Tesla if you're taking Successor. Yeah, because we got Whirlwind Rage. So the full rerolls and extra attack has sort of an exponential impact on Space Wolves, which is why you see Kasan Sabius in a Space Wolf Successor so often. 2 units of 10 scouts. Okay. 15 Wolfen. The Skyclaw squads with Melta-Guns. Not max Melta-Guns, just a couple Melta-Guns. Want to keep our chain swords in there. 8 Desolators, 2 Longfang squads with las cannons, 2 Landspeeder Storms. What are we pointing that buff at? I guess just Skyclaws? +1 attack is pretty good on Skyclaws. They lose out on their Headstrong, so they don't get +3 attacks at that point. They'd just be there. They'd just be +1 for Shark Assault, +1 for Kasan's ability, and then Chainsword base attack. So they're only 4 attacks each. But he can also Chapter Master the Desolators, which is good. Grey Knights. Does this guy log himself in? No. It's weird. It says he logged in as Lees of Otan, but it's definitely a Grey Knight list. And it also says Grey Knights here, so I don't know what that was about. This is a Prussian Berserker detachment, a bunch of Interceptors, and a bunch of Dread Knights. That's normal Grey Knight stuff. And then a Chaos Demon list from Liam. Ooh. Oh, it's... What is this list? I was like, oh, it's... I saw Fiends and Demonettes, and I was like, Slash, cool. But it's not. There's a Bloodthirster. Also, what is this Battle Scribe? This Battle... Is this a Battle Scribe export? Because everything's lowercased. What's that? That's wild. Unless somebody like perfectly recreated a Battlescribe export with that and lowercase everything. So it's a Bloodthirster with Argath, King of Blades, and Devastating Blow. So no, you can't reduce damage, and he's +1 damage and ignores attack effects. So he just ignores everything. And Indomitable Onslaught. The Gaze of Fate, Fluxmaster, Lord of Change with Master Mutator and Impossible Robe. So he's doing the extra mortal wounds. Bolt of Change and Infernal Gateway. Demonettes, Snurglings, Pinkors. Oh, excuse me. I'm very sorry. Triple Fiends, 10 Flamers, and 15 Fleshhounds. But no Shrouded Step, so we're just using them. We're just doing old school Chaos Demon stuff. Where we should probably push with the Fiends really hard because they're beasts and they go through walls, and then we can like sort of reload the chamber with Demonettes. And we have Pink Horrors to hold your backline objective and be impossible to kill. It's nice to see Pink Horrors kind of back in the game. I know people were like, oh my god, how do you kill these guys when the Codex came out? But then they ended up being 14 points model, and everyone was like, well, it's less exciting. But now that the 0 to 1 Pink Horror unit is pretty solid, just to make sure that your backline is super tough. Basically, there are very few. There's basically no like shooting unit in the game that can hold a candle to them, that can like efficiently kill them, because their save is so good, and if you don't wipe them in one shot, then they regenerate with the blues. How do I feel about Votann in the current meta? I think they're like mediocre. It depends. I think Votann are very terrain dependent. If your terrain is good, Votann is bad. If your terrain is bad, Votann's solid. But Votann's like being super tanky and super good at shooting. They're very good at low terrain formats. But as soon as your opponent can hide from them, they're like, fuck, well, this sucks. So you see them occasionally sort of come out of the woodwork if the terrain's really, really lackluster. We're back with some more Chaos Knights with this one. Chaos Knight's doing pretty well this weekend, actually. Which is nice to see, because they've been very mediocre. I'm so interested we saw some Imperial Knights do pretty well in the GT level. But it's so interesting that Chaos Knights are statistically doing better currently, which is weird because it feels like Imperial Knights, Imperial Knights secondaries have always been better than Chaos Knights. Chaos Knights got a buff, and now they're probably around the same level. But Imperial Knights statistically are much, much stronger. They just don't have the tricks, I guess. I guess it's because they can't do War Dog spam. Like War Dogs specifically are sort of buoying up Chaos Knights, whereas Armigers for Imperial Knights really require questers. They require the big knights to buff them. So I guess that makes sense. You get lower model count in Imperial Knights, and I think that could be problematic for them. I think I understand. Took out Fleshhounds for more Fiends. Yeah, that list was already running 3 units of Fiends, so I think like at some point you just run out of need for more. I'm always a little bit wary of the max Fiend units because they do seem a little unwieldy. That might just be personal experience though. Oh yeah, the Necron cubes is finally good, chat. I think that you're probably Wes in chat. You're probably not alone in wanting the Necron cubes to be really strong. This didn't submit lists. Lame. The Necron cubes were. Oh, this is me. I was here. I lost in the finals to World Eaters, unfortunately. I actually took pictures of my games, but I didn't 3-0, so I don't know if we wanted to talk about them, but we played new Dataslate, and I almost got there. I was about 6 points off. I made a tactical error on the first turn. I lost an Neurathrope, which is something you should never do. It was close though. He died exacties through a reroll. I flubbed a bunch of 3-up inbones. If he'd survived, I think it would have been okay. But that was okay. Sisters super terrain dependent? Yeah, Sisters I think also are just getting dumpstered on like a metagame level too. Because we're seeing like Azure Yanni are really strong, and that's always been kind of a Sisters hard counter, it feels like. Because they have really good sister killing weapons. And they're very alpha strikey. And then also like I can't imagine being a Sisters player and playing against Desolators. Like that sounds so miserable. It's like if you're a guard player, but all your models are twice as expensive, you know? Like, oh, instead of getting shot and losing 10 Khazarkin, I lost 10 Retributors. Like, fuck me, I guess. It's like 25-point, demigods. That sounds miserable and awful. So this looks like a little bit of an evolution from Astra Militarum here. I wonder if this used the latest. I imagine that we used the latest data slate for this event. So we're Unborn Soldiers still, and we still have double Khazarkin teams, but not triple. We have the big Cadian squad. It has Finial. Do you still run Finial, do you think, chat? Now I'm kind of second guessing. I'm interested to hear if there's any Astra Militarum players in chat, if I haven't alienated all of them by complaining about their faction. I'm interested to hear what people think about Finial of the Nemrodish first after the change. Because ignoring... I guess it gives you an out for phase caps, so you actually have a chance to kill like Phoenix Lords and stuff, which the army is really bad at otherwise. Is that like why you continue to take it? Because ignoring hit penalties felt like the real money. That was the money with the Finial. And I'm really interested as to how that evolves, because it feels way worse now. Ignoring damage, like damage reduction, is still good, but I don't know if it's worth locking in a command point for it. I guess it probably is, right? You shoot dreadnoughts just fine and stuff. But this is like a real mixed combined arms kind of thing. So it's 2 Khazarkin units. One is Barbican's Keyed with extra range. The other one is mechanized infantry, so it pops out of a Chimera. And then triple armored sentinels. So it's 4 sentinels and 5 rough riders. The Rough Riders also do feel like they maybe get picked up a little bit by the kind of the splash damage of Desolators, because they're right in that defensive category where Desolators are really good against them. That like T4 mediocre save is like right where Desolators want to be shooting. So I am a little bit worried about Rough Riders right now, but Rough Riders I think are untapped potential in the Militarum army, honestly. And I guess right, if Desolators are shooting at your Rough Riders, they're not shooting at your Khazar-Kid, and you're winning anyway. You're like, great. Please don't shoot my Khazar-Kid or my mortar teams. Thank you. So they're kind of a distraction Carnifex in that way, and if they get to commit on turn 2, then you're doing fine. And then just a ton of Leman Russ. Yeah, this feels like a platonic ideal of a new meta Astra Militarum list. We have some more Custodes. An Emperor's Chosen list with an Acolyte. Nice little Acolyte. Trajan, a Shield Captain on Dawn Eagle, big, medium-sized Custodian Guard Squad, 4 with shields, and then a Sagittarium unit. Big Alaris Custodians. Whoa, okay. Hello there. Are we unleashing the lions on some people? 2 units of Venatari, 2 units of Virtus Praetors, a Witch Seeker unit. Find it kind of stupid that Retributors are more expensive than Devastators? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Retributors are like... Their statistics are worse, but their effects are better, right? Because you can't source like Morven Vol in a Space Marine army, you know what I mean? And you don't get pre-game moves, and I guess you get drop pods. That's basically the same. Yeah, I guess like worst case scenario, it's like at least equivalent. But you don't get Miracle Dice. But yeah, they for sure should at least be the same cost, and maybe a little bit cheaper. It's a little silly that they're less expensive, or that the Devastators are less expensive. I'm interested in this big Alaris Terminator squad. Or, I guess it's only 4. It's not that big. But it's still 240 points worth of Alaris Custodians. These Alaris Custodians are the most annoying thing. They're so hard to screen. They're so good at scoring behind enemy lines. And they're exactly just difficult enough to kill that you don't want to shoot at them. What a solid unit Alaris Custodians are. The Acolytes are just cheap action monkeys? Yeah. It's the Acolytes are straight up just the Cyberwolf effect, where single entity, like individual units, are super valuable, because like suddenly if your opponent doesn't have ways to interact with them indirectly, you can hold a backline objective for free, you can screen a corner for free, you can like raise a banner for free. And those are all, like, the cheaper you get those models, the better. And a single entity for 10 points is one of the best conversions in the game. Now, obviously, the Acolyte's not as good as the Cyberwolf, but it's the principle of the thing. Getting a model who can interact with the objective for 10 points is like super valuable. You could even take an auxiliary, right? With like a second individual guy and take like 2 like little Acolytes. I guess you don't want to like randomly. I believe that they get the character keyword when they are singletons like that. So you don't want to take too many because you start randomly giving up assassination. But taking a single one makes total sense. Yeah, they have a rule that gives them character if there's a single one of them. So they're even hard to shoot at, too. Even if you have indirect fire. Yeah. So I don't know if you would take more than one, but certainly the one is really good. We kind of have to... You'd have to jump through some hoops, I think, to get the second one anyway. Oh, here's a 3-0 Imperial Knights. House Tyrannus. With 2 Warglaves. A Castellan. What? With Ion Bulwark, so they improved Invulnerable Save. Crusader with Endless Fury. And he's got Blessing of the Sacrosanct, so he gets the Mortal Wounds. Alongside a Knight Paladin with the Helm Dominatus, so he can lock in his Bondsman abilities. That's less useful because you only have 2 armatures. What is this list? This list is 5 models? Oh my god. What? And Cunning Commander. That one I don't know what that does. That is a wild list right there. This Castellan must have put in some work, dude. Castellans are so weird. What a strange unit. So it's a 5-up CP regen. I guess that is a ton of CP because you also get is it Defend the Realm that gives you a double CP on your turn. So you'd get 4, potentially 4 a battle round, which is a lot. Yeah, it's Defend the Realm. But it's so weird that the we were talking about this, I think, on the Discord maybe recently, but it's bizarre that the big knights, what are they called? The Dominus chassis, is that right? It's the Castellan class. Yeah, Dominus class. It is Dominus class. They don't have bondsman abilities. So the entire framework of the faction is structured around the questors giving bondsman abilities to the armigers, and the Castellan and the Valiant, is that it? Valiant? Yeah, don't interact with that at all in any way. And it's just weird. They for sure should have had some sort of bondsman ability they could give out, because then I think you'd see them a lot more. But they're just there to deal damage, and they're pretty good at dealing damage, so it is what it is. Oh yeah, there is an assassin in there. Nice. Saw 5-0 Votan list with 15 Thunderkin. Yeah, I think we talked about one last week or maybe the week before. Thunderkin are pretty solid. Thunderkin, I think people slept on Thunderkin, and they just needed that little points cut to be looked at really heavily. Any other big events to talk about before we wrap things here? SoCal League? Nah, that's an ongoing event. 20, 17, 16. That's a doubles. Here's a 24. Let's take a quick peek. Oh, Damien Owen from Pro Tabletop. Did they move that to Tabletop Life? Is that what they're called now? I guess the team maybe is still Pro Tabletop. We got some Orcs doing well. Orcs did great this past weekend as well, too. If you just roll to go first, Orcs are amazing. This mostly looks like a normal Orc list. 30 Beast Nagas, 20 Gretchen, Commandos, Meganobs, 2 Kill Rigs, a truck. Is anybody Shrek Boys? Yeah, there's a Meganob Shrek Boy in it, yeah. So this is kind of normal Orc stuff. We've talked about this list a million times in the past. It just wants to put a bunch of transports or stuff in the middle of the table and then say go. And then if you can't deal with it, you just die. Here's some Tau. No broadsides in this list. It is Tau Sept. Double Commander. Exemplar of the Kauyon Crisis. With the Bagel Hunter plate. No Precision of the Hunter with the Thermoneutronic Projector. Just Onager Gauntlet. Okay. The Thermoneutronic Projector feels way worse on the guy who doesn't reroll everything. I guess he took the DW02. I guess he wants that too. You can only have one signature system, and you want to have the full rerolls on the dude who actually needs to like try to kill Abaddon or something. So I guess it makes sense. I understand it, but it feels worse. Thermoneutronic Projector is certainly still worth the points, I think, but it doesn't feel quite as good. Long Strike, a bunch of Crisis Battlesuits, and a Hammerhead and some Stealth Suits. I wonder if we are building to Homing Beacon. Oh, we are! We have a Homing Beacon! Whoa! Whoa! We're going to drop pod in a Crisis Battlesuit unit in turn 1? It has been a while since I've seen that happen, chat. Yeah, they are all small units, too. People really cut that. I think when people started teching against turn 1 deep strikes, people really cut that technology because it was just kind of hard to fit in. But if you have the massive the critical mass of Crisis Battlesuits already, that you're not going to leave them all on the table because you can only buff like 1 or 2 at a time, then you might as well leave one in the deep strike and prop it in. That's cool. Trenton Bates here with a 3-0 with Death Guard. Let's go, chat. This is a good list to wrap the video up at. Let's talk about some frickin' Death Guard, everybody. We're running the Ferrymen. I always have to remind myself what the which Death Guard unit is which. All I remember is inexorable. So Ferryman has the droning, so minus half movement in range if somebody has the special contagion. And then, oh, they give plus 6 inches to the range of aura abilities on a Fetid Virion unit. Yeah, so that's really good for the Foul Blight spawn. That mostly is, you want to play that on the super tank Foul Blight spawn unit, or sort of bricks, yeah. So we're going to brick a Foul Blight spawn into 10 Blightlord Terminators and project that aura across the entire midboard of the table. So anything that comes in counts as not charging, so they get hit first by the Blight spawn, or the Blightlord Terminator, excuse me, unit. So it's a Demon Prince with the Plague Skull. 2 Malignant Plaguecasters. We're really seeing these guys pick up in a big way, which I really appreciate, because Malignant Plaguecasters are badass as hell. We talked about Garrett from Watchers in the Dark at length about his GT win with multiple Plaguecasters, and I think that that technology is very, very useful. And then tons of Plague Marines. Look at this, 30 Plague Marines. Are they in transports, or are they just walking up the table? One is in a transport. The rest are just foot slogging. Or coming out of Deep Strike, or Strategic Reserve, I guess. A Biologist Putrefier. The Foul Blight spawn with the Stench Vats and the upgraded Flamer. And then a Tallyman with Tollkeeper. So all these units in the middle get exploding 6s to hit and +1 on their shooting, and the one unit gets +1 to hit as well. So that potentially can explode a ton of attacks out of all of these Blight Launchers and Plasma Guns. A Fetid Bloat Drone, because they're great. 2 Plagueburst Scrawlers, again, because they're great. And a cheeky Chaos Rhino. This list is hype as hell, chat. So I think you're just going to make a big old brick. You're going to make a big bio ball of Plague Marines and Blightlord Terminators inside that 12-inch Foul Blight spawn aura. And anything that charges into you just gets destroyed. And I almost wonder, like, I'm so curious. I imagine that World Eaters has the technology to push through this kind of list, but it's probably really crappy because you have to fight on death every single fight phase, right? Because you charge into you also don't get your World Eater's faction bonus. So all your stuff is -1 strength, -1 attack. And especially if like your play or your Khorne Berserkers hit into a unit that has putrescent vitality, they actually wound on 4s at that point with their normal attacks, because I think they come in at strength 6. So they actually could get just blown out by Plague Marines. And so if you charge in, like, you lose a bunch of benefits, your opponent swings before you, and then you have to burn your fight on death, and you have to do that constantly. Your attacks are probably high volume enough and high enough strength that they'll eventually kill all of the Plague Marines and stuff. But I wonder who wins that fight, because if you're worried about World Eaters, Death Guard might just have the answer. I don't know if it's enough. I don't know if the defensive technology in the Death Guard is enough to get through the offensive World Eaters, but I bet it's close. I bet that game's really cool, actually. I don't know. I'd be interested. What a hype list. That's fun. All right, chats. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap things up today. This is interesting to look at some of the lesser looked at events that we don't normally look at on Tactical Tuesdays. So thanks for indulging me. Next week, we'll probably be back to looking at normal GTs, assuming that the GTs use the updated data slate, which I assume most of them will. But we're in a weird limbo week because like we're in 10th edition spoiler season, have a new data slate, so a new meta that a lot of events aren't using, and so it's just been a weird one. But I appreciate everyone coming and hanging out with me today. For those who don't know, if you're over on the Discord server, !Discord, and there is a link on my link tree as well, tactical-tortoise.com. We just announced starting next week a new online GT. It's going to be unlocked lists, so you can play any list you want every round. You and your opponent just have to reveal simultaneously to each other. And that's mostly so that people can just like have a good time rocking weird and wacky garbage for the rest of the edition, because this GT is probably going to round out 9th edition, so this will most likely be the last event for 9th edition outside of normal pods as well that we do. So please come hang out with us and play over there. It's over on the Discord server if you haven't looked at it already. There's a little bit of an entry fee that mostly goes to prize support, so we're going to prize undefeated players and do some raffles for people who play all 5 games, and if we need to, we'll do a top cut if we get enough players. So please come hang out. I think it's going to be a good time. I've been playing all sorts of weird and wacky garbage towards the end of the edition now, and I think this is a good way to send it off. Now, once we get to a new format where literally everything changes and your list will no longer be legal anymore. The info for the event is on the Discord server, chat. All of the instructions are in the Discord. There was an announcement yesterday. If you go check it out, there is a registration link in the channel for the server, and there's also a Best Coast Pairings event. I'll link the Best Coast Pairings right now. I'll put it in the chat for everybody. Here you go. Boop. So you can register there. That's where the registration is, but the actual coordination will happen on the Discord server. And then for those who care about T5S2 standings, that will also be submitted for T5S2 points too. So if you want to round out your season with a big win, then this might be the one for you. All right. And with that, thanks everybody. I'm going to go ahead and close it out. But I appreciate everyone for coming and hanging out with me. And I will see you in the next one. I'm going to be playing over on Twitch all week as well, so please don't miss me over there. I'm just going to be doing some random games with random Tyranid lists, so that should be fun. Anyway, cheers, have a good one, and I'll see you around.